Welcome back to Beagle Eye Visions Internet. This is a very short episode, episode number 26. It's called Exploring the Imagination. It's gonna be, it's short but sweet. So we're gonna get some more occulted, deep knowledge, some deep psychology. We're gonna keep studying the mind, and we're gonna keep transcending dogma. So let's go.
Peace.
And that's one of the things about religion that we have to remember when we're talking about that makes it such a hot topic issue is because we're talking about law. Who gets to be God? Who gets to be God's deputies? Who is the Most High? Who is the divine authority? It's all about the claim to the Most High. The only way that somebody can be higher than us is if we give away our power. Because there's nobody, we're all equal. But we're not equal in our knowledge, so ultimately I think it does have to be a hierarchy, but it has to be a cooperative hierarchy like a bee colony. It's about what our value system is, what we care about.
Mind. Today is November the 2nd, 2020. I am your host, Nate Cap. Welcome to the 26th CubbyWhole Repository Podcast, where important topics are unveiled, discussed, and tested. Our website is CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. And as of now, a new show is released every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time and every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Okay, so before we go any further, a few updates I'd like to give is no matter where you're listening to this show from, if you go to CubbyWhole.com, then go to podcast, and then under each audio bar, you'll see a download now button. If you click on that, you'll be taken to a new window with an audio bar. And if you're on your computer, you can right-click that audio bar, and it should give you the option to save the audio to your computer. Now, this won't work on your phone, and I'm almost sure it can only save it to your computer, but I just wanted to let you guys know in case you'd like to have any of those audio files to save, for your own sake. I'm figuring this out, building and maintaining a website is a bit of work, and it's a lot of trial and error and patience. And I'm sure some of you out there understand what I'm talking about. And also, working with WordPress. If you have ever worked with WordPress, you know what I'm talking about. It takes a lot of patience. And I'm also definitely not savvy with a computer. So there's that too. The second thing is, if you're interested, I also like to draw. And I've made some of my esoteric art available to see if you go to the CubbyWhole website and click on Nate. I've got a nice little bundle of drawings I created over the past 4 years. So if you go down and you see the big image of the reflection 1920, you can swipe through the drawings by clicking the arrows on each side, the flanks. It's something else I'm really passionate about, and I hope it inspires you guys. That's something I really want to cover on this show in the future too, is esoteric art and expression encoded with knowledge. So I hope to get on that topic soon. The third thing I'd like to announce is, again, if you go to CubbyWhole.com under podcast, you'll also see that there's slides for some of the shows now, which is really great and helpful to the listener who does better with visuals. I know I do. And this is going to add a whole new dynamic to the way we communicate from here on out. And starting with this show, I'm going to refer the listener to certain slides while I cover them, so that way there's more interacting and, like I said, better communication with the content of this podcast. I mean, eventually we'll probably get to full video shows, but this is the way this information will be shared on here for now. Also, I'll be doing my best to get as many past shows their own slides as well, so look out for those. And starting with this show, I'd like to ask you to go to CubbyWhole.com and click on podcast, and then go down to podcast number 26. And you'll see the images for this show. They're not going to be too many, but as I start going through the material, I'll let you know what slide I'm covering, so that way you can follow along. And because there may be technical issues, I'd like to say that if you're on your computer, you can use your scroll button on your mouse to scroll through the images, or you can click on the images and there should be arrows to click left or right. And if you're on a tablet, you may experience a glitch in the images. I'm not sure what the issue is with that. Maybe it's a browser issue, so you might want to update that. Maybe I should update that too, but I'll continue to figure that out. And you can click and save the images and see them that way as well. So, and if you're on your phone, there may also be a glitch while holding the phone vertical, but I've found that when you flip the phone sideways, so horizontal, it shows the images pretty perfect. And you also got to make sure your lock is off. Overall, it shouldn't be any problem, but if it is, I apologize. This isn't an easy thing to do, but I'm doing my best, and I'll continue to attempt to fix any bugs. So on the last show, Brandon went further into the topic of the dark occult mind control tactics, aka methods of manipulation, which consist of worldview poisoning, nature versus nurture, the value of the individual, preying on primal fears, divide and conquer, and indoctrination. And like he said, we are here sharing this info to help educate people about the techniques, so this way they have a higher chance of defending themselves and others from those who seek to deceive and control them. And Brandon did an excellent job, and I recommend going back and listening to episodes 24 and 25 if you haven't done so already. Plus his show has really nice slides now too. On this show and the next show, I'm going to get into imagination. I'm going to get into green language and also pattern recognition. And this is especially all to help us deal with and understanding the techniques of mind control better. And it's also about improving the self to be able to deal with all the concepts of this podcast better. This show and many alike that deal with the abstract can be very hard for many people to be able to understand or even attempt to understand what's going to be shared here, especially if someone is coming mostly from a hardened, left-brained viewpoint. You really have to use the analytical part, the left brain part, along with the openness and abstract part of the right brain to even begin to see or realize what's being shared here, let alone seeing why it's important. It's like a calibration process. It's about finding balance in the inward. And personally, I've went really far into this because I was more right-brained, especially when I first started looking into this type of information, which I learned very quickly that the left brain has to be exercised equally to really understand the abstract in a more scientific way. that can be laid out in a manner that more people can understand. Okay, on to the topics for this show. Let me start out by saying that imagination is an intelligence beyond what we could ever be taught. That's really important to keep in mind forever. What I'm going to share now is what most people think imagination is, and then attempt to explain what we're not taught about imagination. And honestly, I don't know that there ever could be a true definition for imagination, as it's so complex, But what I do know is that it's our most important tool we have to understanding ourselves and the universe we live within. I'm going to refer you now to the lower and uppercase imagination slide under show number 26. So, what many people tend to believe imagination solely means is creating or making up random things or creating events in certain redefined ways, or someone crazy talking about things that seem beyond a human's mental capacities, like wild theories, or abstract or exaggerated expressions in art, or pretending, like the act of role-playing. And I'm going to refer these types of imagination as lowercase imagination. Lowercase because it's imagination without applied higher knowledge of self. And this is not to put this part of the imagination down or say it's bad or it doesn't matter. It's actually very important and required for human life to be fun, surprising, creative, and definitely expressive. Albert Einstein said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." And as I agree with that statement, imagination without knowledge is just an airplane with no wings. You can't just imagine knowledge or science you don't know. But when knowledge is taken in, imagination applies to the process and understanding of that knowledge, which then can generate many intelligent ideas and it's to help us solve many equations of life that come up as a result of consuming that beneficial knowledge. And I call this the uppercase imagination. And uppercase imagination is the act of pushing vision past the limitations of applied knowledge. So it's imagination applied with and transcending higher knowledge of self. See, it's about finding the limitations of knowledge and then pushing our imagination to see beyond that, especially because knowledge can only take us so far. And the higher knowledge of self is what has been recorded and stored for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's about, evolving consciousness and being free. That's what imagination can do and does. A really awesome author and researcher of imagination, John Rappaport, he says, consciousness wants to create new consciousness, and it can. Imagination is how it does it. If there were some ultimate state of consciousness, imagination would always be able to play another card and take it further. See, it's about becoming conscious of the unknown in order to generate further and higher investigations of self. And the further we investigate, that is, take in higher knowledge of self, including the seen and the unseen, we then become more aware. And because we start to become more aware, we then start to use our uppercase imagination to see beyond the five sense illusion, which is sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste, which is the limitation of imagination based in materialism. And, I'm an artist, and, like whenever I hear people say that they can't draw, this is, they always say, like, I can't even draw a stick figure. I can't even draw a straight line with a ruler. And, this is the limitation, because when you're stuck in your five sense illusion, when you're stuck in materialism, you can't really imagine anything other than what you can see and hear and touch and smell and taste. And therefore you stagnate and you don't exercise, your true capacity for intelligent imagination. It's about, if we don't have that higher knowledge of self that I'm talking about, that awareness of knowledge that, helps us understand ourselves better, then we stagnate and stay in that stage of lowercase imagination. Or in other words, we continue westing. When the mind makes a generalization, such as the concept of a tree, it extracts similarities from numerous examples, and the simplification enables higher level thinking, so abstract thinking. And this is on the slide with the 5 trees. So gaining the knowledge of the 4 trees, like the top of this illustration, this helps our imagination collapse and simplify the idea of a tree by understanding the knowledge of the other trees. This is also very, very interesting, because I'm a caricature artist, and the way that I understand the face that I'm drawing is I look at all the other faces, because, every human head has a face, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and so on, hair, maybe. Well, the point is those are all characteristics. Just like those 4 trees, those are characteristics. And when you study and look at other faces, that helps you understand the face that you're drawing and see the uniqueness, and it helps you simplify. That's the way I understand it, anyway. So this is part of understanding symbolism, because it's simple, it's abstract. And much of the higher knowledge of self is abstract, which requires imagination in order to decode and unveil the mysteries and secrets that are hidden all around us. It's all about the requirement of having an adult vision, along with the key of patience. Patience with the ego. We have to be able to keep our patience with the ego, because it wants to dismiss what it doesn't understand. Very important to understand. And this is why those who are more left-brained have a harder time with abstract concepts. Skepticism ruled by ego will never pierce the veil. You gotta put that ego aside in order to really grasp an understanding of the information you're going to hear in these shows, and shows alike. Uppercase imagination is the key. So let's move on to some more definitions of imagination. And we'll start out with a simple definition from the Oxford Dictionary, which is the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not presented to the senses, the physical senses, also the part of the mind that imagines things. And then from Wikipedia, you have imagination means the ability to produce and simulate novel objects, sensations, and ideas in the mind without any immediate input of the senses, so the physical senses. And an etymological breakdown of the word imagination comes from the Latin imago, which means image, and the noun imaginari, which means picture to oneself.
Looks like you needed that.
Another definition is the faculty or ability of meeting ideas and experiences with realities unknown in order to collaborate with creation to become more self-aware. And I really like that definition. I don't remember where I got that definition, but it is very true nonetheless. Imagination is what we use to empathize, to try and think what other people think, to feel what other sentient beings feel or experience. That's really important. And it's what we use to envision experiences that could occur, whether in ourselves or others. It's like the idea of walking a mile in someone else's shoes, you know? Got to try on those shoes, walk that mile, and try to understand people instead of, bickering and trying to be right. All right, just a little exercise here. What happens when you close your eyes and try to envision something? Some kind of random image pops in your mind, probably, right? Especially if I say, imagine something like a bird. You're literally imagining a bird that more than likely isn't the bird I'm imagining, but it's still a bird of some sort, and you're probably picking up on what type of bird it is, right? This is kind of like the tree thing, like just imagine like all the, the trees being different minds, and we're all trying to envision, simplify to what that bird is. And this is the same as if I said, imagine the world you live in without cars. Now, more than likely, you're pushing your imagination to see this and, what would be different or better or worse. But the point is, you're now conscious of what you imagine and you are aware of that idea. See, it's about giving us vision to see potentialities and to focus on or manifest ideas. And these ideas might not come through clear, but we know what they are and can also kind of, see into the future based on the knowledge and experiences we have. And in case you might not know, and you should know this, everybody should know this, the organ associated with imagination is the pineal gland, which is what many people refer to as the eye or, the third eye. And this pineal gland is the pine cone. This is the pine cone shaped pea-sized conical mass of tissue behind the third ventricle or cavity of the brain. The pineal gland releases chemicals at the time of birth and death. It's the Stargate. It's what the hero myth is all about. It's part of understanding our connection to the spiritual realm and nature. So, dimethyltryptamine, also known as DMT, is the chemical secreted by the pineal gland. And this happens, like I said, at birth, during our dream state, and near or at death, which is what produces out of the body experiences. The pineal is wired to the visual cortex of the brain, and the visual cortex is the primary cortical region of the brain that receives, integrates, and processes visual information relayed from the retinas. It's in the occipital lobe of the primary cerebral cortex, which is the most posterior region of the brain. So the most back end of the brain. Also, I find it very interesting that when you search the etymology of pineal, you get pine cone, which then means pine, which then the verb of pine is reduced down to meaning suffering or punishment.
This place is
And I find that very interesting because the very reason there's so much suffering on Earth is because of the withholding of knowledge, for the power differential of the dark occult, as well as the ignorance and refusal of truth, which is associated with the pineal being blatantly and systematically shut off and docile. And lighting that pineal up, so becoming conscious, is a lot like punishment in the sense that you'll become very alone for learning all this and speaking up about the harsh truth that most don't want to hear. And in my experience, it's taken much suffering to awaken and be sensitized to the insane amount of suffering taking place in this world. Okay, guys, this episode is at its end. Thank you for your time and attention. And also, please make sure to follow up on the next show where I go further into imagination. And I'll be introducing green language and pattern recognition, which I didn't get to cover on this show because of time. And as for now, a new show comes out every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time and every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So stay tuned for more and keep transcending dogma.
Another episode. That was a quick one. Stay tuned. I'm gonna keep grinding out more. I start work here soon, so the schedule will be different, but I'm still gonna try to do an episode a day as usual. It might just be a little bit late night episodes, especially especially on the weekends. So thank you if you made it this far. Keep studying this knowledge. I recommend going through this entire podcast starting from the beginning and then maybe even multiple times. That's what I had to do to really get it through. For me, I'm like to get it through my thick skull, speaking for myself, So yeah, thanks again if you made it this far. Stay tuned and stay golden. Shout out to w.gg. Use code BeagleEyeVision for 10% off. Code in the description. Link in the description. Thanks again, and I'll leave a link to the One Great Work Network, which is Mark Passio's website. It has over 50 content creators. They all have their own different style of this very same knowledge because nobody owns this knowledge. It's for everybody, and everybody needs to understand it. So, thank you again.